Nebraska basketball just finished up another game. Hustle down to the block and get position.
Shot clock to 7. Hoiberg missed. Got his own rebound. Right back up. Missed it.
And there he is. Garcia. How big has he been down the stretch for this Nebraska ball club?
10 points all in the second half. Now the lead back to 3.
Join 93.7 The Ticket to break down the best players and key moments from today's action.
Sanford a couple of steps from behind the line. And now Lawrence from the corner. He hits. And another eruption from all the red and Lincoln.
Not even close.
Creighton has not been able to hit anything. 0 for 8 from distance. Prager needs some space. He connects.
Post-game coverage of Nebraska basketball on The Ticket is sponsored by Union Bank and Trust, the Lincoln Airport, Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services, and John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electrical.
Here we gotta go.
Down to 5. Hoiberg kicks it out. Lawrence for the win. Got it.
It's the post-game post-up on 93.7 The Ticket.
That is correct. Nick Wyman here, Austin Orman, 90% The Ticket and theticketfm.com. You're listening on Facebook, X, YouTube, or on ALLO Channel 961. This is your guys' show. Chime in, 402-464-5685. Nebraska picking up a win over Northwestern. Was it the prettiest of times? No, it was not. But a win is a win. Nebraska picking up a victory at home in front of famous alums from way back to a couple of years ago. Here in the studio, Nick Wyman would like to say thank you to our sponsors, Union Bank and Trust, John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, and Air and Electrical, and Lincoln Airport. We'll plug those as the show progresses. But we're joined by Austin Orman from good old Arizona. It looks like you've had a fun time in Nebraska baseball winning last night, and now jumping on here, different time zone, and Nebraska gets a win. Austin, we'll start with just overall, just general thoughts from yourself about Nebraska's performance today against the Wildcats, a team that they've beat a couple weeks ago on a Saturday, but just look at what you saw today here at PBA.
Yeah, win's a win. I think that's really where I end up with this one for Nebraska. That's we can leave it at that. Good post-game show. Check back again on Tuesday against Iowa, everybody. No, Nebraska had to fight through it again. Credit Northwestern. They found some ways to make Nebraska uncomfortable, especially early on. But this is one, Nick, that as much credit as you want to give Northwestern, go for it. They were a game opponent, but it's another example of this Nebraska team just is who it is, right? Probably playing down to its level of competition more than you might like. Yes, Northwestern forced a few turnovers, but Nebraska looked, sometimes sped up, playing way too fast. Other times just a little bit too loose and not necessarily locked in. I think Nebraska was playing hard, through the issues, the turnovers, especially early on. But man, Nebraska, won by 19, it still doesn't necessarily feel like it, right? I mean, that lead got extended all the way up to 21 at 68-47 before Northwestern's final bucket of the game. Both teams had an 8-0 run, was the largest for them. But that's where, when a team is in the doldrums like that, and you need someone to break out and play well and really carry you, that's where Price Sanford being active and being available consistently for the course of 40 minutes of the game for the 36 minutes that he played. 11 first half points for him really helped keep Nebraska afloat. And then in the second half to be able to explode for 18 on 9 shots, 3 of 5 from 3 and hitting free throws as well. I was kind of asking for Nebraska, to have that player that could step up and carry them when moments got rough like that, when things got a little bit dicey. I've been asking for a complete game out of Price Sanford for a long time. He delivered. He was really, the big reason offensively for Nebraska's big success. We'll talk more, obviously, about the turnovers that played into it, the lineup, obviously, that helped spark Nebraska to that win. But yeah, shout out Price Sanford, second highest scoring game of his Nebraska career. He was incredible for Nebraska pretty much from start to finish.
Yeah, quick on a text line. David Fulgen says, you're going to win a lot of games when your opposing team is scoring less than 50 points. And then Speed Limit says the mop-up crew team was extremely active today. I think that's a nice little lesson, and the mop boys and the mop crew were in line. But yes, Price, 29 points when you're scoring at that high of a rate, 10 of 21 from the floor, 6 threes. But then you look at the rest of the stats line, it's not pretty. I mean, there were a lot of turnovers. It felt like your normal Big Ten noon 11 a.m. start game. I mean, a win's a win. You take a win, like you said, in the Big Ten Conference. You played this team before. It was weird because Nick Martinelli usually is a score at will guy for the Wildcats. He didn't really have to do anything, and they were still in the game. And Nebraska just kind of let them kind of hang around, and then the 4-minute spurt for Nebraska. It's kind of been the against teams like a Washington, like an Oregon, and those teams. That's how they kind of build up leads and win those games. Is what's going on, those little spurts. And Nebraska had one in the second half and was able to kind of jump on it once they found a lineup they like and were able to throw it together.
Yeah, let's start on the Martinelli thing because I think it ties in with the lineup. First of all, I think part of what Northwestern did to give Nebraska some fits offensively was that Nick Martinelli started the game out guarding Rink Mast. You had Trey Singleton on Price Sanford and then a Tyler Kropp and Berkay Buchtengel. Smaller defenders that can get up into Rink Mast's personal space and can jump some of those passing lanes on the perimeter have given Nebraska some issues. So even if Martinelli wasn't necessarily the scorer that you might think, he still led Northwestern in shot attempts in the first 20 minutes. He took 8 of them, but only knocked down 1 of them, missed his 2 threes, and didn't get to the free throw line there at the start. But, that's a wrinkle that Northwestern showed. Putting a smaller, more active, more agile defender on Rink Mast. Those players that can get in the passing lane and get up close to take away his dribble are the ones that give him fits. I think that's a part of why he struggled. And then also a part of why Nebraska found a lineup that worked with Rink Mast off the floor. Rink Mast has had a couple better games recently. Today, 3 points on just 4 shots, did have 9 rebounds and 4 assists, but 6 turnovers. You credit Northwestern for forcing a bunch of those. It was the lineup, though, for Nebraska that got things rolling. We were talking about it a little bit. Hoiberg, Jacobson, Sanford, Frager, and Buchtengel, right? In that lineup, Northwestern had a couple of moments where it could, attack Price Sanford on that switch on Martinelli. But for the most part, Nebraska did a really good job, whether it was Sam Hoiberg on a switch, but primarily it was Buchtengel and Braden Frager. Their ability to guard Nick Martinelli, to not give up the easy ones, to talk through the switches, to be physical enough to stay in front in the post and athletic enough to hang with him on the perimeter. Just like in the first matchup, the ability of those 2 guys, specifically Frager and Buchtengel, to make Martinelli's life tough. And then, Berkay being a little bit more athletic than Rink and Nebraska, switching a little bit of how it went about its offense with Buchtengel at the 5, instead of Rink Mast. Finding those 2 guys in Frager and Buchtengel, defensive success on Martinelli, being able to still control the glass against not a huge Northwestern team, but a big enough Northwestern team. I think those 2 guys, their ability to hang defensively, to continue to force Northwestern into some pretty tough shots, the fact that those 2 guys could stay on the floor, play well together defensively, that opened things up for Nebraska on offense because it had to change how Northwestern was playing defensively, and that's where you saw Cale Jacobson end up with a huge second half, a couple of big threes in that spurt. Price Sanford, again, 18 points in the second half. So finding that lineup, it took till, right before the U12 to do it. But I think what Nebraska was able to do defensively and limiting Martinelli, I think holding Northwestern under 0.8 points per possession. Yeah, 0.778 points per possession for the Wildcats. They only scored 23 times on 63 possessions. Elite defensive effort for Nebraska that could have looked even better, Nick, if Nebraska hadn't allowed 27 points off of turnovers.
Yeah, 28-27 at halftime. We were looking there, and it was like, oh, this is not pretty. It's very weird because this game, both teams are, pretty solid containing, controlling the basketball and not turning the ball over. You look at today, 16 for Northwestern and 18 really jumps out for Nebraska. I mean, I don't think it's anything Northwestern really did. It was just being sloppy, and I think spacing was a little weird, a little wonky at times. And turnovers have kind of been an issue over the past couple of weeks. Where do you stand kind of with like how Nebraska's running their offense and just in general just spacing the floor? Because in today's day and age of basketball, spacing, it's all about spacing.
It is. And there are times when Nebraska's offense was really good at it. But when Nebraska's offense is spaced the best is when Rink Mast can be a factor. Draw the big guy out of the paint and either attack off the dribble or have a bigger guy that's not comfortable guarding out there. Northwestern has guys that are comfortable guarding on the perimeter, athletic enough to do it, well-coached enough to talk through the switches. So when Nebraska was able to get Rink Mast on the mismatch, primarily with West, Northwestern did a really good job of, number one, being in good help position so Nebraska couldn't get the lob. They did a good job timing up their double teams, I think, to force a lot of those turnovers. And you credit them for that. But I think there were times where Nebraska was just cutting because it's what they were coached to do, and it wasn't always with purpose. Nebraska would have that player flash from the weak side to the high post to attempt to go high-low, but Northwestern had a lot of bodies there in the paint. There are times that Nebraska just collapsed way too many people into the paint instead of playing space. I think that led to some of those turnovers. And for Nebraska, I think they end the day averaging over a point per possession. Yeah, 1.08 points per possession. Not ideal for Nebraska, but the turnover percentage of 28.6 is through the roof. And I think it was a combination of the bad spacing, even though Nebraska shot it, decently enough from three, even in the first half. To me, it was a mental thing for Nebraska in a lot of places, right? The not taking care of the ball, the not necessarily doing your job on time all the time. And that's something Nebraska needs to get cleaned up. Again, we've seen these performances against teams that you think Nebraska would be a lot better than. And a 19-point win is a 19-point win. But until the last 12 or so minutes of the game, on offense, I didn't think Nebraska played anywhere close to its standard. And that's results aside, right? It's not like Nebraska was getting bailed out with bad process. The bad process was leading to bad results. Nebraska can be so much better than that. And I'm surprised that it took them, 26, 27 minutes to settle in.
Yeah, it was very weird and different Nebraska than we've seen all year. Maybe a first half against New Hampshire kind of comes to hand, but that was months ago. Bruce Davis says Mast is not going to get 26 points every game like at Rutgers. Got to give him a break.
Here's the thing. Rink Mast, the scoring isn't primary for him, right? The fact that he can get 26 against Rutgers, for example, is a big deal, right? But so much of what Rink Mast and his value to Nebraska is that he ties everything together offensively when he's able to be out on the perimeter, right? Nebraska clearly doesn't need Rink Mast averaging 20 points a game. I said going into the year, if Rink Mast is averaging 18, 20 points a game, either Nebraska's offense is as elite as we've ever seen, or other guys haven't stepped up around him, right? Rink Mast needs to score enough to threaten, right? Rink Mast needs to score enough to open up the lane for the back cutting that Nebraska wants to do. Rink Mast needs to be trustworthy enough with the ball in his hands to be a distributor. Rink Mast is a good processor. Rink Mast is a good passer. He struggled a little bit in that realm, right? When teams send pressure, when teams can get after him on the perimeter, and any big man will stub their toe against an aggressive double team from time to time. So Rink Mast, the fact he wasn't a big factor today is fine. He needs to be in Nebraska's next games, and we'll see Nebraska operate at peak efficiency when Rink Mast is doing his job, going, 2 of 5 from three, and that'll open up space for him even on the inside, right? When Nebraska gets those switches, he can pass out of it. He had a couple nice passes. Again, 4 assists on the day is good for Rink Mast. He ends up tied for second on the team behind Sam Hoiberg, and Berke Buchenjob also had 4 assists, so 16 assists on 24 made field goals for Nebraska. But we're talking about a Nebraska team that we want to see start peaking again, right? And Rink Mast taking only 4 shots and Rink Mast turning the ball over 6 times is not Nebraska operating at its best, right? He's got to be better, and not just in terms of putting points on the board. Rink Mast has got to take care of the ball. He's got to stop forcing passes. And now I think the adjustment period is through. He knows how teams are going to attack him. Now Nebraska has another answer to the test. And I want to see Rink Mast really throughout the rest of February into March start playing, more consistently like the Rink Mast in terms of the ball handling that we've seen, for now a season and a half at Nebraska too.
Bruce says he wants my opinion on this topic. I mean, yeah, that's basically what we're segueing into here. I mean, yeah, 3 points, only 4 shots, not Rink Mast like, but he had 9 rebounds. He had 4 assists, like you said. 6 turnovers, could that go down? Yes, you love to have
these two.
You'd love to see that 0 in the win column. But when you have a guy like Price scoring like that, I just, when you have Rink, we've talked about it for the last month. I think we've beaten the dead horse. When Rink Mast is playing at a high level, it makes Nebraska's offense, it's collaborative. It makes everything easier. When he's only scoring 3 points or so, I think it throws everything off. And like today, you can kind of get away with that. But I'm going to give credit to Northwestern. This is a team that had Michigan on the ropes a couple days ago. They are a team that was up double digits on Michigan a couple days ago. And they were, the record, Nebraska saw them a couple of weeks ago up at their place, and they were on a 4-game skid. What was going on tonight? Northwestern also on a 4-game skid, and some games that were close. I'm seeing deja vu here, Austin. I feel like I've seen this game before in a little bit, but a win's a win. You look at the score, you just look at the box score, 68-49, Nebraska win over Northwestern. A win's a win. I think you just chalk it up and you move on to the next one. And obviously the next one is Iowa, which Nebraska has not seen them yet, but you got Price Danforth who bailed you out with 29 points, 6 threes. He's going to do he's going to hit those shots and do that. Braid Frager, 8 points off the bench. Cale Jacobson, 10 points off the bench. I think that's worth noting to talk about. He was 4-4 at one point coming off the bench. He hasn't really been a primary scorer, but if he's going to add some depth to that lineup, and that's depth is everything everybody's talked about all year. If he's going to score like that and be able to get some quality buckets in those bursts, it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Cale Jacobson was pretty phenomenal for Nebraska today. 10 points on 7 shots, also had 6 rebounds in his 27 minutes. And Cale Jacobson's been in the rotation, obviously, for Nebraska all year. He was a plus 19, according to the stats that I'm seeing now, had 10 of Nebraska's 18 points off the bench. It was obviously him and Fraker doing the scoring. Cale Jacobson has had this ability. You go back to at times down the stretch against Michigan, especially comes to mind, even Oklahoma at a couple points, of hitting some big shots for Nebraska, right? People forget that Cale Jacobson scored 40 in a state tournament game at Pinnacle Bank Arena, right? The man knows how to put the ball in the bucket. He just hasn't been asked to do it necessarily consistently for Nebraska because Cale Jacobson is going to be on the floor for this team in important moments because of his ability to handle the basketball, because he was another one of those guys that you can trust to hold up in a switch against Nick Martinelli, for example, because of his role as an organizer. Cale Jacobson's going to be on the floor. And I think that's a generally positive thing for Nebraska. And Nebraska fans should be happy that there's finally some local talent being developed, right? I mean, how long have Husker fans been asking, where does Wisconsin get these guys? Where does Iowa get these guys? Where does Minnesota get these guys? Even Michigan State, Nebraska has one of those guys in Cale Jacobson that's not going to be asked to do everything. He's going to be asked to do his job. And part of doing his job is hitting the open threes. The 2 threes that Cale Jacobson hit to push Nebraska's lead, I think, to 8 and then to 9 were massive. Those were, sparks in that run that really got Nebraska off to the races. Then he had a couple buckets getting downhill. Cale Jacobson's a bigger bodied guy than you might think, right? So his ability to get his shoulder past guys, his footwork in the lane, his ability to finish through and around contact is really good. Cale Jacobson, what he brings to this team, he's so multifaceted. He plays so many roles for them. And he was incredible today. There's a reason that Nebraska played better with him on the floor in this matchup. This was a Cale Jacobson type of game. And, he did everything Nebraska asked him to do and arguably more. Hit your open threes, play solid enough defense, don't turn the ball over. 2 thumbs up, Cale Jacobson.
That perfectly ties into this text. 8985 says that was the Cale Jacobson that we saw blossom in the Crown tournament last season. Nebraska needs that Jacobson the rest of the year. I agree. We talk about depth. You always want depth in basketball. I mean, 7-man rotation. Nebraska's tried to get away with it from time to time, but then, like we said, some guy goes cold and then scoring's on, just a handful of guys. When you have him scoring 10 off the bench, leading the way off the bench in 27 minutes, 4 of 7 shooting, was very efficient, 2 of 3 from 3. That adds just another layer to Nebraska's offense. Tonight, or today, I should say, very weird. It's a very weird stat line because you look at like Buchengel, only 2 points, Mast, 3 points, Lawrence, 2 points. Haven't really seen a Nebraska game where there's so many guys just in single digit scoring. Usually the starters are in double digits in Nebraska's wins this year. And then you have Price with 29 and Sam Hoiberg with 14. Sam, I think, it won't show in the stat book, but 7 boards as a guard, 8 assists, 4 steals, just doing the Sam Hoiberg things. And there were a lot of loose balls that he dove on and everything like that. It was an interesting game. I mean, let's flash back to the first half, Austin. Let's just focus on the first 20 minutes. If you had to describe that first 20 minutes in one word, how would you describe just the play of that one? Because it looked like a Nebraska game that we've seen in past seasons.
It kind of felt, Doc Sadler-ish, Barry Collier-ish.
One word. I said one word.
Maybe even early Fred Hoiberg-ish, and that Nebraska was just loose. Nebraska wasn't buttoned up. The effort was there. I think they were playing hard. They were playing through their mistakes. but Nebraska's ball handling completely went out the window. Nebraska rushed some passes. Nebraska flipped some passes maybe a little bit too casually that led to tips. And stuff like that is part of the reason why an offense can struggle, right? If you're starting your offense all the way at half court instead of between half court and the 3-point line because of a tip or because you're not handling pressure well, if you're forcing a pass into traffic just because you think you can get it through there, that's where a guy like Berke Buchengel, he dribbled the ball up once or twice in transition and slammed on the brakes, right? Nebraska needs to continue to get better at, in those moments where things are going poorly, of not finding, passivity, but finding ways to be more careful, right? Nate Lenzer was screaming at those guys to lock it in on the sideline. He had to have been. I'm a little surprised that message didn't sink in. Credit Nebraska, I think, for finding ways to fight through it. The fact that Nebraska led at the half was, a testament to the resolve of that team. But if we just go back and we look at the numbers from the first half, and we can do this for both teams, I mean, it was very balanced from Northwestern. Chiaravino had 5, Quayton had 5, Singleton had 5, and a lot of that was with Jordan Reed on the bench. With the foul trouble, he had the 2 in the first half. For Nebraska, Price Sanford stepped up in moments. Frager had his 2 threes, I thought really sparked Nebraska in the first half. Hoiberg found ways to get downhill. He went 3 for 4 and had his 2 free throws there. The other thing, though, keeping Nebraska in the game, Nick, and I am honestly floored and honestly shocked that we haven't had a single text about this yet, the rebounding. The rebounding, that was everyone's complaint after Purdue. It's been everyone's complaint all year. They have to be better on the boards. Why is Nebraska so bad at rebounding? Nebraska dominated the glass. In the first half, they nearly doubled Northwestern up 23-12. Nebraska ends up with 11 offensive rebounds in the first half, and they score 14 second chance points, right? Nebraska turned it over 10 times in the first half, only got 5 points off of 8 Northwestern turnovers. But of Northwestern's 27 first half points, 12 of those came off of turnovers. So if you think about, winning the extra possessions sort of battle, Nebraska, funny enough, took 2 more shots than Northwestern, in large part thanks to out offensive rebounding the Wildcats by 8. You have 2 more turnovers than they do. But if you look at it this way, Northwestern with 3 offensive rebounds and 10 turnovers is 13 free possessions. Nebraska forcing 8 turnovers and pulling down 11 offensive rebounds. That's 19 extra possessions that you wouldn't necessarily think of. And then you add the points off second chances and points off turnovers. Nebraska +1 in that category when it's all said and done in the first half alone, in a game that Nebraska led by 1 point. So a little bit different in that Nebraska was much more aggressive in going after offensive rebounds. And, it worked out for Nebraska today. That's really what kept them afloat in the first half. And then there's that stat on the broadcast. Nebraska out-rebounded Northwestern like 14-1 in like a 4-minute stretch in the second half. And Nebraska kept the foot on the gas pedal in that range in the second half. I mean, Nebraska for the game ends up with a 40-24 rebounding advantage, 13 offensive rebounds, 17 second chance points, doing something they haven't really done all year in pursuing offensive boards. It's one of the most efficient plays in basketball. If you get a second chance, whether it's a kick out 3 or a put back right at the rim, for all the issues turning the ball over, Nebraska actually hung in that game because it created its own set of free possessions through the offensive glass.
Isaac in the text line says, "Hey, I was just about to mention great rebounding, GBR." So he must have. You can text that in. But hey, there's a lot of traffic out right now here in downtown Lincoln. A lot of people walking around. So if you want to chime in on the conversation, this is your guys' show. 402-464-5685. 8907 says, "I'm sure you've already mentioned it. Just tuning in." But Nebraska is very uncharacteristically the last 2 games, 14 and 16 turnovers the last 2. Do you think it was just the opponents, or do you think it was sloppy play, or both? I mean, Purdue, I'll mention off the rebounds and let you answer that, Austin. But the rebounds, yeah, you're right. I think the last 2 weeks all we've heard about is Nebraska's got to get better rebound. Nebraska's got to rebound the ball better. Nebraska's got to do this and that on boxing out. I mean, yeah, 40-24 on rebounds, 13 offensive boards. That's a completely different game compared to the Purdue game. I know Purdue's got Oscar Clough. He's, they always have somebody. Purdue's always got somebody who's 6'11 plus 7 feet tall, but to be able to adjust and learn from that And I don't know. It's just a completely different situation. So we did get a text about the rebounds, just a little delayed after the fact. But
well, let me answer 8907 really quick. I mean, you do want to credit Nebraska's opponents to some degree, but Nebraska has to talk through it. I think there were some miscommunications on passes against Purdue, and Nebraska's just got to play tougher, right? Purdue, even Illinois to some degree, in Northwestern, they found out that you can, bother Nebraska by being aggressive, by being up in their grill on the perimeter. And Nebraska hasn't consistently had answers for it. Nebraska likes to kind of settle in those first 10 minutes, see what the other team is doing, see what they want to do, and then find Nebraska's own counterpunch to it. Well, if you want to play that way, you have to take care of the basketball to figure out what the other team is doing. Turnovers were the only thing that gave Northwestern life, really, in this game. You match your season high with 18 of them. You did that against New Mexico, a game that Nebraska had the Lobos on the ropes before turnovers allowed them right back in it. So, sure, credit other teams for getting up in Nebraska's grill maybe a little bit more, but now you've seen that for a few games in a row. Teams are going to want to play you that way. If you're Nebraska, now there's no excuse. You have to lock in. You have to value the ball. It's the most valuable thing because there's only one of them on the court. There are 10 players. There are 3 refs. There's 94, feet by 50 whatever feet of court. There's only one basketball. You got to take care of it. And Nebraska has the players to do it. They've done it all year. So you hope this is just a little rut that they're going through, but it's not going to fix itself. It's going to take that focus. And if I'm Nebraska and Fred Hoiberg, if I showed every single, offensive rebound that Purdue got and challenged my team that way after that game, as much as you might want to burn the game film from this one, I think you got to show the turnovers because so many of them were so easily preventable. It was just Nebraska, thinking too much or Nebraska not thinking enough about what it was doing. Nebraska can cut it down. It's what they've done, all year. So I think these last couple games are really the outlier, but you got to show your team just how much, turnovers kept Northwestern in the game. And I would trust that Nebraska would have that figured out, by Tuesday in a game that possessions are going to be at a premium in.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa's coming up twice here in the next month. It's a grind, and this game was one from start to finish. But we're going to go to break before we do. Union Bank and Trust is a great rate. Get a great rate at 612 or 24-month CD at Union Bank and Trust. Learn more at ubt.com. When we come back, we'll put a bow on this one, and then we'll go ahead and look at some more of what's ahead, and then we'll wrap up the hour with kind of previewing that Iowa game. So Austin Norman's chilling down in Scottsdale, right? You in Scottsdale?
Chilling, I'm working. Come on now.
Chilling. I mean, hey, you're in Scottsdale, Arizona. I mean, real quick before you go break, what was the weather like last night for Nebraska baseball?
It was a crisp, cool 63 degrees. I had to have long sleeves on down here in Phoenix. Life is really tough. So it's up to 70 right now, but a little bit of a breeze. Nights in the desert get a little chilly. So it'll be another quarter zip day for your boy down in Mesa today. Headed to Sloan Park after this.
Yep. Yeah. So not just chilling, but chilling like a villain out there in Arizona. So we'll be right back here. 9317 ticket.com. Send your text 402-464-565. We'll be right back after this break.
There are so many realtors in Lincoln and Omaha, but don't get overwhelmed by all the no names, plus all the different companies. Ben Bleicher with Professional Realty Group at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Real Estate is your go-to option, whether buying or selling residential, luxury, leasing, investment properties, or commercial property, small or large. Ben's team offers decades of experience, unbeatable customer service, and promises to fully protect your interests throughout the entire transaction. Call 402-419-6309 for all your real estate needs. Ben Bleicher with Professional Realty Group of BHHS Ambassador Real Estate. Have you been looking for home technology upgrades but don't know where to turn? Online information can be contradicting and confusing. Lincoln's own experts at Diode Technologies can turn your living room into the place to watch your favorite sports. Whatever your vision is, Diode Tech is ready to make it a reality. From home theaters to outdoor entertainment spaces, they bring you along through the entire process to make sure you get exactly what you want. If you're ready to upgrade your entertainment space, visit Diode Tech online at diodetech.net or give them a call at 402-793-5124.
Are you looking for an exciting new way to put your skills to work?
Explore new career options in the fintech industry at Currency, a Sandhills Global company. We offer full-time positions in financial sales, compliance, operations, and other fields. We also offer a 4.5-day work week, an attractive benefits package, and opportunities for advancement. Put your motivation to work and grow with us at Currency. Visit gocurrency.com/careers to learn more.
Gentlemen, Valentine's Day is just around the corner. Don't be that guy running to the store for flowers and a card on your way home. Let Sartor Heyman Jewelers help you be a hero this Valentine's Day. We have great gifts in store now, and if you spend $129, we'll throw in a free bouquet of roses. Give her what she really wants this year and let us do the rest. Sartor Heyman Jewelers, your hometown jeweler since 1905. In Lincoln and Grand Island and online at sartorheyman.com.
Eustis Body Shop started as a single shop in Eustis in 1979. Since then, we've been getting Nebraskans back on the road. We treat our customers right and have never forgotten our roots, even as we've grown to 8 locations across the state. That's why Eustis Body Shop works hard to ensure our customers' safety and offers free loaner cars to keep you moving. Eustis Body Shop, where our customers send their friends.
The most recommended Eustis Body Shop. That's who we are.
Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services is here to help you protect things that are most important to you. Whether it's your home, your family, or your future, Jack Russell has the proven experience to get the job done while developing authentic relationships with you. Give Jack a call today at 402-421-9100. Again, that's 402-421-9100. Or visit one of his 2 locations in Lincoln or Seward and learn how you can excel in the complicated world of insurance. Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services, a trusted and well-respected representative since 1999.
Want to make the easy call? Call John Henry's. From leaky pipes to a broken AC, flickering lights to furnace fights, even drains and duct cleaning, we've got it handled. Plumbing, heating, air, and electrical, all under one trusted roof. Proudly serving homes across Lincoln, Omaha, and surrounding areas and ready 24/7. Visit calljh.com or call John Henry's.
435-5555. John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, and Air.
And electrical.
Let's fly. Your next trip starts at Lincoln Airport with American Airlines. Now flying nonstop service to Dallas, Fort Worth, and Chicago. American Airlines connects Lincoln to major hubs and destinations around the globe. Wherever you're headed, LNK gets you there with new nonstop flights on American Airlines. Now boarding. Convenient, fast, and stress-free. Book your next flight at LincolnAirport.com. LNK, make flying easy.
Gentlemen, are you ready for something beyond the ordinary haircut? At Scissors and Scotch Lincoln, they blend your old-school barber feel with your favorite watering hole. Sink into a comfy chair, unwind with a complimentary drink, and let their master barbers handle the rest. It's not just grooming, it's an experience. Whether you're prepping for a big meeting, needing to get cleaned up before family comes to town, or just need a little time to yourself, Scissors and Scotch Lincoln delivers sharp style every time. Book now at Scissors and Scotch in Lincoln, just south of 30th and Yankee Hill Road.
With UBT, you've got total control over your money. Like Doug, who runs his game day tailgate like a well-oiled machine.
I got burgers, brats, chicken, dogs, plus all the fixins'. And with the UBT Go app, I can track my food spending from anywhere.
Pro move.
They don't call me Grill Sergeant for nothing.
No matter your goals, UBT helps you feel good about reaching them. Union Bank and Trust. Member FDIC.
Now back to the post-game post-up on 93.7 The Ticket. Post-game coverage of Nebraska basketball on The Ticket is sponsored by Union Bank and Trust, the Lincoln Airport, Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services, and John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electrical. It's the post-game post-up on 93.7 The Ticket.
Welcome back. 1040 O Street, Nick Wyman here. Austin Norman chilling in nice and cool weather in Arizona for the day. You're listening to the Husker Hoops postgame show. Nebraska wrapping up a 68-49 win over the Northwestern Wildcats a little under a half hour ago. Before we go into everything, John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electrical, proudly serving Lincoln, Omaha, and surrounding areas. John Henry's can assist you with any service like electrical maintenance and installation or repair. Call today at 402-809-1159 or go to jhllincoln.com. Austin, before we dive into everything, I want to talk a little bit about Price Sanford. Score you 29 points. I think it's worth talking about. He is kind of, been the team's, I want to say MVP because it's not every game he is the guy leading the way. But you look, he had a quiet 15, 15, 14 the last 3 outings against Illinois, Rutgers, and Purdue, and now explodes for 29 of the 68 against Northwestern and drives the bus here today in the capital city.
Yeah, Nebraska looked for him intentionally. Nebraska found ways to get him the ball. Obviously, the 6 of 13 from long range is going to stand out. I think it was his last attempt that got tipped, or one of his last attempts did. But 6 rebounds, right? He helped control the glass. He kept Nebraska in it. He kept Nebraska afloat. And what's so funny, about a guy like Price Sanford, hits his first 2, gets Nebraska out to a 6-2 lead. Then the broadcast starts talking about, oh, he's really struggling. He's off. He's 2 for 6 and missed his next 4. Well, and then I think he hit his next one there in the first half to get to 3 for 7 and 3 for 8. Yeah, you missed more than you made, but that's still 37.5%, which is an elite mark, or borderline elite mark. And then you go and you shoot essentially 50% in the meaningful minutes after there. The thing with a shooter like Price Sanford is that that's a guy that I think Nebraska needs to continue to get more shots for. I know he had a couple games where he struggled at least, for half the game, but shooters like Price Sanford, they showcase their value the more shots they get up. Now, Nebraska found him some easy ones, getting him that 3 in transition after Cale Jacobson's 3s were really big. That's where Nebraska needs to continue to look for him. They make that a focus because those are simple shots, but Nebraska ran some actions for him in the half court. Nebraska also got him downhill a few times. He finished through contact, I think, early in the first half or early in the second half. It's the leveraging of that 3-point shot that can get Price Sanford downhill, because you'll have to overplay the 3-point line to deny that pass to him. He can go back door. You can get a good screen set for him and get him going to the basket. This was probably the most complete game Nebraska's gotten from Price Sanford in terms of the balanced scoring across the 2 halves. He also ends up pulling down those 6 rebounds for the game. Price Sanford was really good when Nebraska needed him to be. Nebraska in the second half averages like 1.25 points per possession. And a lot of that had to do with Price Sanford heating up again from long range, being efficient from there, and his gravity opening up so much for other guys like Cale Jacobson when they had to, from a Northwestern standpoint, overplay a little bit and make sure they had, not just one set of eyes, but 2, 2.5, 3 sets of eyes on Price Sanford at all times.
8907 says, what a great variable this team possesses, beating Nebraska. Some players will have bad games, but other teammates will pick them up and pick up the slack. Opponents can just concentrate locking down 1 or 2 players on this team. They have 5 or 6 guys to get buckets for you. If you would have told me before the game, Mast and Jamarcus Lawrence would only combine for 5 points and Nebraska would still win by 19, basically thinks you were lying. Yeah, I think that's what makes this team so dynamic, because a guy goes cold on a certain team, a star player, your number 1 scorer goes cold. Nebraska's got guys to back that up, and Nebraska's gotten fortunate that there's games where somebody off the bench will light a spark and fill that gap. Or let's say the bench doesn't pick it up, but the starters will pick it up. I think that's what makes this team so dynamic and so diverse. And they've been able to not really get away with it, but they've been able to do it against teams like a Northwestern, per se. Was that first half film that something you'll want to watch again? No, not at all. I don't think anybody will want to watch. But it is Nebraska's just able to play complementary basketball and be able to fill the gaps when needed. Austin.
Well, let's just use the literal definition of dynamic, characterized by constant change, activity, or progress. That's Nebraska. It changes on any given night who the key player is. And in these key moments, right, it's not like Nebraska is just relying on one guy to score buckets, right? There's no, 2001 76ers Allen Iverson on this team, where if he doesn't go for 20 or 30 somewhat efficiently, that team had no choice, right? The point of dynamic is that Nebraska is, in constant activity. All 5 guys touch the ball for Nebraska, I would argue probably more than any team in the country, at least anecdotally speaking, right? The progress, Nebraska's always trying to get to another action. Nebraska's offense, when it's moving at its best, is moving forward into the next action or into the next good shot. And then, constant change. Who's the leading scorer is one thing, but who's sparking the run is another, right? You know that what Price Sanford does for Nebraska is important. That's a given. That's not going to change. Rink Mast is important. You know that Berkey Buchanan brings a lot of energy on defense. You can count on, 10 points a game, a couple steals, and 5 rebounds from Sam Hoiberg right now. But, not every game is Cale Jacobson scoring 10 points off the bench. He's playing his role. But, usually you think about Braden Frager for the bench scoring. And yeah, there's only a 2-point difference between those two. Frager's 2 threes were important early on. Cale Jacobson's 2 threes were important later on, right? It's just as soon as you game plan for Frager, who wasn't great in the stat sheet in the second half, here comes Cale Jacobson. So, yes, I think part of dynamic for Nebraska, the meaning of it comes into play when you think about how Nebraska wants to play, where you can have a guy like Price Sanford lead all scorers with 29 and be explosive in that way. But having different guys step up at different times when their number is called, sometimes throughout the course of a whole game, sometimes just in those stretches like it was for Cale Jacobson tonight, that to me, is Nebraska defining dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, hit it on the nose, and you have the literal definition in front of you, I would assume is how you pulled that out of there. Pull that rabbit out of a hat. But yeah, 402-464-5685. It's our Heyman Jewelers text line. Keep chiming in. You guys drive the show. We are here. I'm here in Lincoln, Austin out in Scottsdale, Arizona. Mind you, Nebraska baseball tonight. 7:30 first pitch, correct? Against Northeastern?
6:30 my time. But yeah, 7:30 for the rest of you back.
Time zones are a thing, people. Time zones are a thing. But yes, that they'll plug there. I think we look at big picture here. This is just another conference win. It wasn't the prettiest at times. For 50% of it, no. It was 28-27. Looked like a football score. A lot of turnovers. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't a pretty watch. Anybody will admit that. But big picture, teams 22-3, 11-3 in conference play. Got back in the win column. 6-1 on the road. 13-2 at home. 3-0 at neutral site. I think big picture, get a win, survive in advance. I think that's the cliche they throw around February and March. Just it wins a win. Will it be a game that they look back on here in a couple weeks? I mean, that first half depends how the season goes. This group, I trust that this game will not define what the next month of basketball will be, especially yeah, go ahead.
I think it can help set the tone, though. I think we've seen, Nebraska once again being incredible in second halves after Nebraska was incredible in first halves against Michigan and against Illinois. This team needs to use this February stretch to figure out, if it's going to put together 40 consistent minutes of basketball, because it can hang with anyone in the country when it plays well for 20 minutes or even, 30 minutes. But if Nebraska can avoid that 10-minute stretch, as a whole, right? If it's, you struggle for 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, one segment just gets really sloppy. Okay, it adds up over the course of the game, and you're not going to play perfect. As far as I know, we're still looking for the first perfectly played basketball game in history. So even if Nebraska keeps playing the way that it is, Nebraska is in a good position. Nebraska will be fine. But here's the schedule again, quote unquote, lightens up for Nebraska, especially after Tuesday, road trip to Iowa. You have a couple games where these are teams that are pretty far down in the net in Maryland and Penn State. Nebraska, to flex its muscle would be well served to come out and dominate from the tip, right? Not let anything, slip away or feel bad until, the deep bench, such as it is for Nebraska, is in the game. But a game like this, Nick, I think came at the right time for Nebraska. And again, you just play the schedule that's in front of you. But there weren't a whole bunch of possessions tonight. Let me pull up the final numbers. So yeah, Nebraska had 63 possessions. I think Northwestern ended up with 63 as well. That's not very many. That's a little slower than Nebraska wants to play. But who's really comfortable in 63 possession games? Iowa is. Who takes really good care of the basketball? Iowa takes really good care of the basketball. And a lot of that is because they ask Bennett Sturts to do so much, But this is where, if we talk about the challenges stacking on top of one another, having a slow game, Purdue was relatively slow, more possessions they add up, by the time you get to overtime. But Purdue wasn't up and down track meet by any means. On top of Northwestern, and then heading into Iowa, Nebraska, is a little more used to playing slow, I think, now from these next few games. And Iowa's going to be especially on the road. I think the culmination of a lot of Nebraska's recent experiences. You can even go as far back as Minnesota and Washington, I think, to illustrate this point. And the reason, that I say this game came at a good time is because Nebraska won't be able to get away with 18 turnovers against Iowa. The Hawkeyes are way too efficient to do that. Nick Martinelli's good. Bennett Sturts is a whole nother level, and he can create for himself, a little bit more without the action compared to a guy like Nick Martinelli. So if Nebraska was going to have, a game where it turned the ball over this much and was going to make ball security an emphasis and a focus, going into Iowa is probably the ideal time for that, where Nebraska, won't be able to afford, I would say, even, 13 or 14 turnovers. Nebraska's got to get back to, the 9 turnovers a game at average coming in. You might be able to get away with, 9 to 12, depending on how aggressive Nebraska is on the offensive glass. But Iowa's been, a top 50 offense all year, probably, top 30, and have a top 15 at least, at least top 15 player in the country in Bennett Sturts, who will be able to make Nebraska pay if it's sloppy, if it turns the ball over, especially on the road. So no better time, I think, for Nebraska to, now have Saturday or the rest of today, but really Sunday and Monday to focus on taking care of the basketball, heading into a game where possessions will be at a premium and being efficient is going to be the name of the game.
And Iowa, outside of their last game, have been pretty. They've ended up on the right end of some close games. Beat Indiana by multiple. Almost beat them by 20. Duked it out with Rutgers by 6. Duked it out with USC by 1. Beat Oregon by almost 20. Beat Washington by 10. Beat this Northwestern team we saw today, 76-70. And then dropped one in College Park against Maryland, 77-70. They also have Purdue here in about an hour and a half. So Iowa will be a team that's going to be challenged. They're playing a team that Nebraska didn't show up for the first 3 minutes. Hoiberg even said it himself that they lost the game in the 3 minutes against Minnesota. So we'll have a good idea which Iowa team we'll get to see. And like you said, they're playing. The schedule shakes out really well, and they're going to be a team that wants to control the pace. And Nebraska, if they can limit those turnovers, like you said, they should be right back on track. But I think you take it with a grain of salt. Did they play? They played some tough teams over the last week. They lose. Yes, they did finally lose a game here in the past 3 weeks. They lost to Michigan, Illinois, and Purdue. But big picture, none of those losses are bad losses at all. Like you're losing to tournament teams. Are you? Well,
not even tournament teams. I mean, you lost to a preseason Final Four team, preseason dark horse, and the hottest team in the country at the time. Not necessarily in that order, but yeah, I mean, all 3 of your losses are in quad one. You had a chance, and you're kicking yourself. You're saying, we could have won all those games. I'm not going to necessarily say Nebraska should have won, any or all of those games, but Nebraska, had a good chance. And the fact that those are the 3 games that you lost, sure, it might, knock you down out of, perfectly protected seating, but no, Nebraska's still in really good shape, right? And the fact that they're finding ways to not play its best basketball and yet still win by 19 points in a Big Ten game, yeah, I mean, tip of the cap to Nebraska. Job well done. Wash your hands of it.
Before we go to break, keep sending your text. We're going to have one more segment. Sending your text, 402-464-565. You're watching on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, YouTube, or on Allo Channel 961. Ask me or read the rest of those. John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electrical, proudly serving the Lincoln, Omaha, and surrounding areas. John Henry's can assist you with any service like electrical maintenance, installation, or repair. Call today at 402-809-1159 or go to jhlincoln.com. We'll be right back. One more segment. We'll preview kind of big picture, just what Nebraska needs to keep building the resume, I would say, because there's still a lot of basketball left to play, Austin. I know it's February 14th is Valentine's Day. Basketball's kicking in high gear. Football season's in the past, but there's still a lot of game to be played on the hardwood, I would say. Right, Austin?
I would agree.
Yep. So we'll be right back. We'll big picture for Nebraska and kind of we'll look around the Big Ten as well, because there's plenty of basketball being played on this Valentine's Day. You're listening to 917 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
There are so many realtors in Lincoln and Omaha, but don't get overwhelmed by all the no-names, plus all the different companies. Ben Bleicher with Professional Realty Group at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Real Estate is your go-to option, whether buying or selling, residential, luxury, leasing, investment properties, or commercial property, small or large. Ben's team offers decades of experience, unbeatable customer service, and promises to fully protect your interests throughout the entire transaction. Call 402-419-6309 for all your real estate needs. Ben Bleicher with Professional Realty Group of BHHS Ambassador Real Estate. Have you been looking for home technology upgrades but don't know where to turn? Online information can be contradicting and confusing. Lincoln's own experts at Dio Technologies can turn your living room into the place to watch your favorite sports. Whatever your vision is, Dio Tech is ready to make it a reality. From home theaters to outdoor entertainment spaces, they bring you along through the entire process to make sure you get exactly what you want. If you're ready to upgrade your entertainment space, visit Diotech online at diotech.net or give them a call at 402-793-5124.
Husker Nation, get ready for some Monday morning madness. Spend your President's Day with the Huskers this Monday with an 11 a.m. matchup against the number 15 Iowa Hawkeyes right here in Lincoln. The Huskers only have 2 games left at home, so now is the time to watch them in person before they head to the Big Ten tournament next month. Tickets are still available for this can't-miss morning matchup, but don't wait. Lock in seats today at huskers.com/tickets. Go Big Red.
Eustis Body Shop started as a single shop in Eustis in 1979. Since then, we've been getting Nebraskans back on the road. We treat our customers right and have never forgotten our roots, even as we've grown to 8 locations across the state. That's why Eustis Body Shop works hard to ensure our customer safety and offers free loaner cars to keep you moving. Eustis Body Shop, where our customers send their friends.
The most recommended Eustis Body Shop. That's who we are.
Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services is here to help you protect things that are most important to you. Whether it's your home, your family, or your future, Jack Russell has the proven experience to get the job done while developing authentic relationships with you. Give Jack a call today at 402-421-9100. Again, that's 402-421-9100. Or visit one of his 2 locations in Lincoln or Seward and learn how you can excel in the complicated world of insurance. Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services, a trusted and well-respected representative since 1999.
A membership with John Henry's will fast-track you to front-of-the-line service, seasonal tune-ups, and far fewer unexpected moments. That means no breakdowns, no waiting on a call, and no nonsense. It's consistent care that prevents small issues from turning into big bills. Join the Comfort Club and get VIP treatment 365 days a year with 24-hour priority response, member-only discounts, and peace of mind on your home's most expensive systems. Call
John Henry's.
John Henry's Plumbing, heating and air.
And electrical.
I'm Alfred Nobel, the inventor of dynamite. So the Nebraska Lottery has asked me to talk about the Cash Blast promotion. Until March 24th, buy a 2x2 ticket and get a voucher. Enter online for a chance to win a $5,000 or $500 weekly prize. If you're winning vouchers from a 7-day draw ticket, your prize is doubled. So when can I explode the dynamite?
No dynamite in the studio, Dr. Nobel.
Well, how about a cherry bomb?
No.
Sparkler?
Sorry.
2x2 top prize odds are 1 in 105,000.
Let's fly. Your next trip starts at Lincoln Airport with American Airlines. Now flying nonstop service to Dallas, Fort Worth, and Chicago. American Airlines connects Lincoln to major hubs and destinations around the globe. Wherever you're headed, LNK gets you there with new nonstop flights on American Airlines.
Now boarding.
Convenient, fast, and stress-free. Book your next flight at LincolnAirport.com. LNK, make flying easy.
Just got new tires put on my car today. You did? I did see you leave the office. I didn't need to. Graham Tire picked up my car this morning and dropped it back off and they were done.
You're kidding. How'd you get that kind of service?
That's just what they do at Graham Tire.
Schedule your service online on the Pickup and Delivery tab at GrahamTireLincoln.com. That's GrahamTireLincoln.com. Let us do the running. Some limitations apply. See store for details.
Gentlemen, are you ready for something beyond the ordinary haircut? At Scissors & Scotch Lincoln, they blend your old school barber feel with your favorite watering hole. Sink into a comfy chair, unwind with a complimentary drink, and let their master barbers handle the rest. It's not just grooming, it's an experience. Whether you're prepping for a big meeting, needing to get cleaned up before family comes to town, or just need a little time to yourself, Scissors & Scotch Lincoln delivers sharp style every time. Book now at Scissors & Scotch in Lincoln, just south of 30th and Yankee Hill Road.
With UBT, you've got total control over your money. Like Doug, who runs his game day tailgate like a well-oiled machine.
I got burgers, brats, chicken, dogs, plus all the fixins. And with the UBT Go app, I can track my food spending from anywhere.
Pro move.
They don't call me Grill Sergeant for nothing.
No matter your goals, UBT helps you feel good about reaching them. Union Bank and Trust. Member FDIC.
Now back to the post-game post-up on 93.7 The Ticket. Post-game coverage of Nebraska basketball on The Ticket is sponsored by Union Bank and Trust, the Lincoln Airport, Jack Russell of Farm Bureau Financial Services, and John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electrical. It's the post-game post-up on 93.7 The Ticket.
Welcome back. Husker Hoops postgame Nebraska with a 68-49 win over the Northwestern Wildcats earlier today. 94.7 The Ticket, ticketfm.com. If you're listening on Facebook, X, YouTube, or ALLO Channel 91. We only have a couple more minutes left, but before we go, sponsor Lincoln Airport. American Airlines is back at Lincoln Airport, bringing nonstop flights from Lincoln to the Dallas, Fort Worth, and Chicago area starting in June 2026 with seasonal winter service to Phoenix starting in the winter of 2026. Tickets on sale now. Austin, we have a text here from 8907. It says, isn't it so refreshing watching Coach Hoiberg for Nebraska make adjustments as the game is going on? And just, I think we mention that all the time with Nebraska, with this team. We've seen with Fred Hoiberg, he's able to adjust on the fly, whether it be at halftime or out of a timeout, of a media timeout, and whatnot.
I'm going to make the tongue-in-cheek comment first. Coaches look a lot better. Fred Hoiberg looks like a genius when Nebraska holds onto the ball and the ball goes in the hoop. Easy for a coach to look good that way. But no, in all seriousness, Fred Hoiberg found the lineup that worked, right? I think he recognized during the second half that during Rinkmast's normal break that, okay, this lineup has a little bit of juice to it. It's going on a bit of a run, right? He knows Caleb Jacobson can play kind of that igniter role for that team as well. And I think Fred Hoiberg has a knack for calling the right play at the right time. So I think Nebraska's players played better, obviously, in the second half. They flashed that stat on the broadcast quite a bit. Nebraska, averaging +6 in the second half of Big Ten games, even in a second half where they were outscored by Michigan and Illinois in those losses. But yeah, the ability to get to halftime, assess where the group is at, figure out what's working has been a strength for Fred Hoiberg this year, and the players have made him right, a lot more often than not. So yeah, it's a credit to Fred Hoiberg and the whole staff, right? Let's not short them. But Fred Hoiberg's play calling ability, you don't think about as much in basketball, but it's certainly present. His sense for, what's going to work at this moment in conjunction, I'm sure, with communication from players on the floor. Yeah, it's been a thing of beauty more often than not for Nebraska. And it's really exciting, I think, to see, Nick, when Nebraska is struggling, it can find that lineup that can really take off and either get Nebraska back in a game or give Nebraska some cushion, give Nebraska some breathing room. It's a testament to Fred Hoiberg, what he's able to do in pressing all the right buttons. It's a testament to Nebraska's players for sticking with it until they have that breakthrough moment and having, one of those moments, at least at some point in every game so far this season.
Let's talk a little bit about that before we get out of here. Let's talk a little bit about the lineup that they had of Sam Hoiberg, Caleb Jacobson, Bryce Sanford, Braden Frager, and Butengel. I think that's when things started to kind of turn for the better during this game because they needed some answers in the second half. They put those guys on the floor, and I don't know how much successful it is in every game, but today it was kind of the answer I feel like it was. But here's what your thought was just on that, those five guys sharing the floor together.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it can be a different combination of five depending on the matchup, right? Nebraska found the matchup that worked. I assume that lineup shared the floor in the first half. At some point, I don't have the exact lineup data in front of me, but it worked in the second half. And for, as much as we malign Nebraska's depth, and I do think there are, legitimate questions. We've answered that on this show and others before. Nebraska, despite playing just 7 guys, wore Nebraska down at the end of the game. And you had some of your hardest workers on the court. And that's not a knock against Jamarcus Lawrence and Rinkmast at all. But, you think about Sam Hoiberg. What's he going to do? Defense and energy and, beat guys off the bounce. He's going to make Northwestern work. Cale Jacobson, might be the weak link in that lineup, if you will, but he's certainly not weak. He's a key cog in that machine. Frager's an energy guy. Sanford runs, more miles per game than probably anyone in the Big Ten. And Buchtengel has been so valuable for Nebraska because of his impact defensively, maybe hustling a little bit too much. Like that one that he tried to save out of bounds after it was tipped out of the hand of Price Sanford. But that's how he, got on the floor, stayed on the floor, and has made his biggest impact. And so having that group just come downhill at you and have to chase them around the perimeter and have them up in your personal business on the defensive end, that group exhausted Northwestern. It took the life out of them, took their legs out from underneath them. And it's a huge credit to that group for staying true to, I think, the identity of how those guys play together. That was that we're going to outwork you. We're going to get to the ball first. We're going to make you chase us around the court. We're going to be right there in your jersey on defense. So it's no surprise to me necessarily that it's those 5 guys, even just from a little things perspective, that really clean things up for Nebraska.
Before we get out of here, 8907 says, well, where do you guys project Nebraska to be in the big dance? Obviously, there's a lot of game left, as we mentioned before the last break. He sees them as a 4 seed. I mean, it all depends on what's going on. There's a Saturday coming up here, 21st. A lot of marquee games in the top 10. Today, you got North Carolina playing. You have Houston playing K-State. You have Arizona, Texas Tech. You have Michigan winning today. You have Iowa State beating Kansas. A couple things that, as Austin's talked about on here before, rooting interest for Nebraska, because you need certain dominoes to fall. But I think the short answer is control what you can control. Obviously, they have a schedule that's less daunting, but you have the West Coast trip still. You have Iowa twice. You have the teams who are just looking to gather some momentum for the Big Ten tournament in Maryland and Penn State. And then you have the Big Ten tournament in general. So I think you just control what you control and go from there. I don't think you can rely on this X, Y, and Z has to happen. Just do what you got to do, play your schedule, and go from there. That would be my final thought on that one, Austin.
Yeah, no, I think a 4 seed at this point would be underwhelming and disappointing for Nebraska, who is still in outside contention for a 2 seed, but in most places has settled in at a 3. If you get a 4 seed, it probably means you split with Iowa and weren't very impressive. Maybe you split your West Coast road swing and you're just kind of okay in your other games that are left at home. And then you probably go one and done in the Big Ten tournament is the path to a 4 seed at this point. And I think if that happens, that would be a bit of a letdown. Obviously, a 4 seed is great. It would be, I think, the second highest seed Nebraska's ever received in an NCAA tournament. But this team has played, at a 2.5, 3 seed level more often than not. They have the resume to back that up. And that's why I think it's so important for Nebraska to really clean up all the little things that we've talked about, for, let's say, the better part of 10 days or so now, is because it's right there in front of them, because we know that they can play to that level. DP will always say, if you show me once, that's the new standard, right? I think, it's hard to complain about a 19-point win, but I don't think anyone in that locker room is going to be satisfied with it. I don't think they would tell you that they played up to their standard. And that's really what I want to see from Nebraska down the stretch here, Nick. How do you control what you can control? How do you get the best seed possible? It's by playing up to the standard that you set for yourself. In games that Nebraska's going to be favored, down the stretch, probably every time. If they're not favored, it's going to be on Tuesday against Iowa. But everything this team wants to accomplish is still in reach. I would say a 2 probably a little bit high. A 4 would be a little bit low. So I think if you're Nebraska, you're able to hold serve in beating Iowa. You beat UCLA on the road and probably USC as well. Handle business there. Win once in the Big Ten tournament. More likely than not, you're probably the number 7 or 8 overall seed in the tournament by virtue of the resume that you already constructed. So no foot off the gas, keep the pedal to the metal. And, everything is still in play in terms of the seeding that Husker fans are dreaming of for this team right now.
There's a lot of basketball in play, and there's a lot more post-game coverage here on 93.7 The Ticket as well. So, Austin, I'm going to let you get out of here. I'm going to do some housekeeping with our sponsors. You have fun tonight. Another baseball game under the lights in Sloan Park, correct? The home of the Chicago Cubs?
Home of the Cubbies, yes. So I know we have plenty of Cubs fans on the text line, so I'll make sure to get some good pictures and talk about all the great Cubs history before Nebraska baseball and Northeastern tonight. Should be a fascinating game. Northeastern, one of those kind of preeminent northern powers in the sport right now, really consistent NCAA team, really consistent in regionals. I know we have far too many Yankees fans for my liking on the text line. You can thank Northeastern for Cam Schlittler, who was really good at the end of last season for the Yanks. And Nebraska, I think, has run into Northeastern in the NCAA tournament before. So this should be, a good game against two teams. Really curious to see how Nebraska carries the momentum forward from last night, season opening 12-2 win. Good start to the Husker weekend, too. Husker softball winning. So it's on the baseball team to keep it rolling now.
Yeah, they got Texas Tech tomorrow. Another number one. Hey, knocked off one number one already. Could knock out another. So thank you, Austin, for everything. Enjoy your time and safe travels back to the capital city here. So I'm going to do it here. Read the sponsors here. 93.7 The Ticket. Nebraska basketball postgame show is sponsored by Union Bank and Trust, a great rate. 612 24-month CD with the Union Bank and Trust. Learn more at ubt.com. John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, and Air and Electrical, proudly serving Lincoln, Omaha, surrounding areas. John Henry can assist you with any service, electrical maintenance, installation, repair. Call today at 402-809-1159 or go to jhlincoln.com. And Lincoln Airport American Airlines is back at Lincoln Airport, bringing you nonstop flights to Lincoln, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Chicago areas starting in June 2026 with a seasonal winter service in Phoenix starting in the winter of 2026. Tickets on sale now. Nebraska once again with a 69-48 win over the Northwestern Wildcats. They are back in action on this next Tuesday on the 17th against Iowa. That is all we have for you. Stick with us here on 94.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Thank you all for joining in and chiming in on the text line.
There are so